Okay, let's just try just turning, warm up the old-fashioned way. So the lovely thing about this exercise is just that sense of just flowing, like when you're on a swing. As a kid, when you're on a swing, you just lose the eyes, you don't look at anything. And so the world is just rushing past. Should be the same here. So you're in the flow rather than in the room. So if you were in the room, you'd be locating yourself according to the objects within it, the stationary objects. And now you're just flowing with pure movement. And it's immensely enjoyable. So there should be a sense that the turning is almost effortless. So your legs aren't really producing it so much as accommodating it. So the legs are having to relax all the time to receive this movement. So by turning, we're producing a centrifugal force out from our center, and also a centripetal force, which is the gathering of the mind in the center. So just feel the flesh in the face, the flesh in the arms, the torso, sort of loosening and relaxing and being thrown out away from the core, away from the bone. And as the flesh relaxes, you'll feel the soles of the feet differently. So they'll seem to spread. It's as though your feet get wider. So that's very important. So just imagine what a shoe does to your foot. It imprisons it, it's tight around it, and it prevents flexibility. So what we're trying to do is just undo that. So each toe has a life of its own. The foot has 5 fingers, 5 toes, each one with its own character. And the centrifugal force, basically the expanding force, it's a sense that it's producing a smile. So you think of like, the image of the Buddha meditating, he's quite plump. So there's this sense that he's like a pyramid, he's sort of swelled here. So it's like a sense of contentment. There's nothing you would rather be doing, so there's no disturbance to the mind. Basically, if your mind's wandering, it's because on some level you're cross. You're a little bit annoyed or peeved. Yeah, so the relaxation expands you width-wise, and it also is this feeling that you're sort of shedding, like you've got loads of sort of pullovers or cardigans or jackets draped over your shoulders, and they're just gradually falling away to the ground. So you end up naked, but with all these clothes strewn on the ground around you. And then you just, so when you stand, there's this sense that you've emerged, you've come out of the ground naked. Yeah. Yeah, so just feel the two forces in play here. So gravity. Yeah, so it's all that's wanting to do is just take you into the ground. It wants you to die and dissolve, basically. Become a slurry and seep through the cracks and disappear. And the force that's coming up, it's a bit like the life force. You're like the young plant that's coming out of the ground, yeah, all fresh and pale green. So there's that sense of life coming up you, and almost like death pulling you down. Yeah, and we need both. And then just feel the legs. You've got your big feet on the ground, like a duck's feet, really wide and toes spreading. Most of the way in the heel, but sort of drifting into the outside edge. You've got the shins, the thighs, the knees are trying to sort of drift that way. You don't want to push them out. If you push them out, then they'll pull in. Yeah, you just want to let the relaxation here cause a sort of a tendency to drift out. The toes are sort of trying to come round this way. Yeah, so the feet are trying to sort of turn in. If you're too much like that, then it's just too open here. It's difficult to yield. You don't have that yielding mind. So there's a sense that you're concealing yourself. And then you want the two hip bones and just feel how the hip bones insert onto the sacrum. Yeah. So the sacrum, we normally think of the sacrum as like a triangular bone, but really it's like a diamond. It's got the top like this and then a bottom like this, yeah. And the sacrum, the hip bones actually come in on top and attach to the top of this, yeah. So there's very much a sense that the two legs are sort of a bit like a heart, a bit like the shape of a heart. So they come up and out, and then they come down onto the sacrum rather than up into the sacrum like this. The legs come up into the hip bones like this, but then the hip bones do this and hold the sacrum from on top. So if you can just sort of visualize that and let that visualization create a certain mood, then you'll just feel the legs better. So it's like, the heart of the legs is like this. And then the bit at the bottom here, that's just your coccyx. Yeah, that's just your tailbone. Yeah. So this real sense that you've got this shape in your legs. And the feet almost feel like they're sort of coming together under the ground rather than pushing out like this. They're sort of coming together. It's what Nitzan called grabbing the ground. It's the same when you've got like 1 foot forwards. This is why John, who's very much against big stances, big long postures, because if you have a long posture, your feet are always pushing apart. You want this sense that they're pulling together. You're holding on, you're grabbing, you're pulling into yourself, you're containing. So the world is coming into you like this, you're consuming. So you've got this heart here, which is the legs, and just think, the bits that we normally neglect are like the two bits here, these two crests of the heart as it comes in, because we normally just think of the legs coming up like this, but instead it's got these two humps here. So just getting a sense of this area, yeah? That's what John called the quiver, like the quiver of arrows. That the archer just whips out an arrow and then just shoots it. Yeah. So it's the same when we yield and attack. It's like you're taking an arrow out of your quiver and then just firing it out. But then you've got this real sense that there's something really meaty and powerful there. And then you've got the same shape in the arms, really, So if you think of that, there's a heart on the horizontal plane, inserting into the back, yeah. So something's coming out of my back here and round and out of my back here. And there's almost like a ridge down the middle of the body where those two arms of the heart are joined up. Yeah, so we just have to, the visualization, just something you hold in your mind that gets you into the energy, which takes you into like a magical space, into the space of spirit. So this is what John was he really got into all of this when we were in Blakeney. So 2001. So he was basically at the same age that me, Roberta, and Mark are at now. So we are the age. The age to really get into like the spirit body. Okay, and now let's just, so feeling the breathing. So it's really long. And if it doesn't need to be with your actual breathing, I mean, it helps if it is, but if you feel this long breath, almost like the breath of the universe, then you just, that's what you trace. Don't get too attached to your own diaphragm. So you just keep that visualization. So everything that you're doing with the hands should make the image stronger. Until you're inside it, you're possessed by it. And just remember it all, without the sinking and relaxing, then nothing would happen. So that's always there. Mm. Yeah, so what do you have to do with your mind to make these two pockets here and these two pockets at the back? There's like a real sort of build up, like the way guys will psych themselves out, or athletes before the race. They'll be yelling at themselves and stamping their feet and punching their hand, just to rouse that sort of animal energetic body. It's like a bit like the warrior putting on his armor, putting on his uniform. Yes, remember John used to say it's like picking up a cloak and sort of pulling it over your head, yeah? Like a hoodie, like you're pulling the hood up over your head. Yeah, this one of these structures is what John called the cowl. So this sense of like the monk's hood that you're sort of receding into. Like that thing in the Carthusians, when they enter their prayer space, they pull up their hood and you can no longer see their face. And when they enter the normal world, they pull back their hood and you can suddenly see them. Okay. Now let's just bring it up. Okay, so first of all, just to ease the legs really, let's just get into like the single weightedness. Yeah, so it's not just, you know, pacing from side to side. It's that real sense of full and empty. Yeah, so I can really put my weight here and let this empty. And it's just, you know, the quality of the mind that's with the fullness and the quality of the mind that's with the emptiness. So the mind that's with the fullness, we tend to call that attention. Yeah, so my attention is here, but then that frees up, if you like, my negative attention, or, you know, the other, which is this side. And I don't want to bring my attention to this side. Otherwise, it will start filling up with my weight. I'll start coming into it. Yeah. I just want to almost see it from the corner of my eye, from my peripheral vision, whilst I've got all of my attention here. Yeah, so this is what makes full and empty difficult. They're both within us. It's not as though the empty is outside someone. I don't need to care about it. So I go into one foot, and the more I can bring my attention here, the more this will actually resonate with energy, with, you know, with an emptiness that has something, it has power. It's not just nothing. Well. And this is, you know, one of the things that's just really difficult, this, because we're so used to looking at things, yeah. And that's the last thing. It's like, you know, when you look at something, you cramp its style. You know, it gets self-conscious and it just ruins everything. So it's like you just turn away so that something can just come out here. Yeah, so your attention, your gaze, it has weight. It will always produce pressure. So you just have to be really careful how you use it. Sometimes it's better not to look. So what we'd like to do is develop an attention which has variable weight, if you like. So sometimes I can really mean it, and then it'll be really heavy. And sometimes I can barely look, yeah, and then it won't be so heavy. So here, so it just depends how you feel, really. You can really gaze at this, really look at the heel, the outside edge, each toe. Yeah, so we're just trying to really look at what we are and what we have. It's like looking in the mirror all the time. And the ego hates that. This is our impeccability, if you like. Yeah, so this is like the true function of the other. You know, the other enables you to look at yourself. They reflect what's in you. So their otherness is also in you. Ooh. So this foot is spreading. Yeah. And sometimes there's that sense like, oh, I don't want to do this. You know, it's like this whingy thing inside that's just so, you know, that because basically we'd rather do anything but look at ourselves. Yeah. We'd rather watch TV or criticize someone else. So there's always part of you that hates this. And that's what you just have to learn to override. And that's what takes that takes decades to get to that state where you just have that sort of maturity. Okay. And now basically the same thing, but with both feet on the ground and just moving from foot to foot, but just trying to have that sort of, that inner stillness. You know, so often we will get a flow going. So my body is going with the flow. That's really important. But this, in a sense, should precede that. So this sense of just being still, I'm just hanging down. My coccyx is trying to grow down and go through my heel. And I'm just trying to let this leg be as empty as possible. So it's almost like this joint becomes free and I could just sort of take the leg off and throw it over there. Yeah. And so it's real full and empty. And then just moving into this foot simply by bringing the attention into it. And so my attention is here. I'm sort of aware of this, but I'm also aware that I shouldn't put my attention on it because otherwise it will ruin everything. Yeah. So my attention is here. And then you just use the finger. You just point. You know, remember when we were kids, when you were a toddler and you see someone strange, Mum, why has that guy got? And she's saying, don't point, it's rude. Yeah. So we're being rude now. So you're just using the power of pointing. So just point at that foot and just let your weight move across. Your weight will go where your attention goes. So now you just fill this one up and you just let this one be. I'm trying to just release here. This is the difficult bit, the hip. So my attention is in this foot. And then but you don't want any sort of delay. If you start thinking about it, then it's too late. You just point and instantly you just move across. And you just keep on repeating until you feel the power of the pointing. Yeah, so it's just here, and I just go. And you can do it with objects, you know, the objects in your room, you know, you can sort of point at them and just feel just how much more of your attention is focused by the finger. The pointing is really strong. And then here and yeah, so I'm in one place, my attention is here, and then my attention is here, and my body just flows across. Yeah, so this is important because without this, there's always the chance, if I just thrust from this leg without actually having put my attention here, then there's the chances that I'll miss this foot or I won't hit it cleanly. And a little bit of my weight will always stay in this foot. Yeah. So we're just locating the two feet really. So I'm in this foot and then I just point. I really see the heel and then my body will flow across to it and it will land in the heel clean. And then I'll be able to pick this foot up. Yeah. You'll be properly single weighted. Yeah. So when you work with someone that's got that, their energy has a real sharpness, a clarity and a sharpness that a lot of people doesn't have. So a lot of people, when they use energy, there's still a lot of body and force behind it. Yeah. So here I just point, and that's where my body will go. So it's, you know, it's similar to when we used to pull with the feet, but we're not pulling with the feet. We're just using the attention. So here, and I just go. And whoa. Then you sort of begin to appreciate just how difficult it is to get 100% in one leg. Yeah, so just because you can pick the other leg up, it doesn't mean you're properly in the other leg. This leg has to be totally loose and relaxed. It's like all that residual tension has to go. Otherwise, I'm not completely here. And then when I point, it's like a clean place to move into. And then I just got to somehow just let go here. And then you just, and then just, yeah. So really, you know, so I'm looking down at this heel, and then I look at this heel, and that's where I will go. It's so natural. It's so much what you always do that you don't realize you're doing it. Yeah. So it's like as soon as you direct that attentive force, that attentive gaze on something, you're already moving towards it. This is what we're just trying to look at. Yeah. So as soon as I'm looking here, that's where I'm going. I'm just feeling that very slight lag between, you know, the attention and the actual movement. There's a little gap there. Those are the gaps where spirit can come out. So everything's here, and then, whoa, that's interesting, and you're off. Yeah. And then you just point and you look. And so the finger directs the gaze. It's like a rifle, like a gun or a bow and arrow. And there's something about, you know, having that sort of just casual sort of spontaneity. Ooh. Remember Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid? That movie, 1969, was it? With Paul Newman and Robert Redford. There's a bit where they're trying to get a job as guards for this mule train carrying gold. And they have to, so the Sundance Kid, Robert Redford, has to prove what a good shot he is. So the guy who's going to hire them just tosses a coin and tells him to shoot it. So he tries to shoot it and misses. And the guy says, oh, you don't have the job. So they walk off, and then he just wheels round and shoots spontaneously. And this coin goes flying in the air. So there's that feeling of it needs, the attention is actually most effective when it's fleeting, you know, when it's on the move. Yeah. Whoa. When it sort of takes, it's almost like, you know, if someone was to be over here, suddenly they call my name and say, oh, yeah, you can just feel, you know, this, you know, first of all, your mind would leap there. And then your body would slowly catch up as I hear, ah. Yeah, so the device that we use of just sort of lifting the heel, that's all that is. It's almost like just pointing. I'm pointing, I'm bringing my attention to the foot, and then my weight will just naturally flow across to it. Yeah. Ooh. Okay. And now let's just come back to this. Yeah, so if what we've just done is a bit like the bow and arrow or the gun, you know, the sniper's rifle, you know, where he's just lying there and just trying to just relax, you know, they stop their heart for a moment to pull the trigger. It's interesting because, you know, when they talk about pulling the trigger, they always use the word squeeze, the same as we do when we use the muscles, we squeeze the muscles. So you use them in such a way that it doesn't disturb anything, yeah. So that image of the sort of the sniper or the archer, you know, they're stationary and they're shooting, yeah. Well, if you think of like the slingshot, you know, David and Goliath, you know, so David and Goliath. So when they spin it around and just let go and this thing flies out. So this is a bit like the turning here. So it's like we've become the slingshot. So you're just building up this energy through the turning. Someone's doing some work on Shabbat. The people in the synagogue won't be happy. Saw a lovely little film last night about religious Jews. And they showed them in the yeshiva, in the school, you know, where they teach the boys the religion. These little tiny kids, yeah. And the teacher, the rabbi, you know, says, you know, where is Hashem? And they all squeal, everywhere. And then he says, how do we meet Hashem? And they say, mitzvot. So it's like acts of kindness. That's where you meet God. It's beautiful. And now just turning, but just pin yourself to this foot and just, so here we're just trying to just really relax the arm, just letting it sort of be heavy. So ooh. And then just feel just how much whip you need in the hip to actually send it on its way, to bring it up and send it out. And then this side, so 1, 2, so just give it time. 1, 2. Just try and stay in this leg. Yeah. So normally, you know, when people straighten the leg like this, basically they're coming out of their root. So it's okay to straighten the leg if you can stay in the root. Yeah. So if I can stay down and then just squeeze this leg from the ground rather than lift the energy to relieve myself. But to start with, we just try our best just to keep ourselves down as the arm comes up. So the energy that's rising is being directed into the arm, not into the body. Yes. So we do this in the form a lot, you know, when you just let the arm come out to the side before you push with it. And also we point a lot, we don't realize it, but you know, so if you look at the form, you know, when you're going to come into a foot, normally that hand has done something to actually connect with the foot, which actually guides your weight. So the hand and the foot are always connected. Ooh. And then let's try both together. So 1, 2, and so here you really have to sort of feel the foot, get into the foot. So get into the foot. And this hand dropping down will actually take you there, but in a sense you need to be there already. There needs to be some mental presence in the foot. Again, otherwise you're liable to miss it. You'll hit it skew. Ooh. Ooh. Yes, just looking at the shoulders now, just trying to keep them down, you know, because when you get excited by something, you tend to come up like this, yeah? And that's the exact opposite of what we would like. So, ooh. And we only do that because we're complete control freaks, yeah? And we just want to control every aspect. So here it's like, I just got to let the arm go and let it somehow drift up without the help from my shoulder. Ooh. And that's actually really quite demanding emotionally because it rips you open. Ooh. Yeah, so we're just looking at the internal content, really. Yeah. And basically any other discipline, including most religious disciplines, don't contain that. It's either just pure technique or pure ego. So here we're just looking at the feeling, the emotion, the difficulty in just letting something be, letting our own body be without the mind trying to control it. Whoa. And now let's just bring it back to just something simple. So now just sort of with the dantian, and again, just that feeling of just sinking down, heavy shoulders, yeah. That's it. Yeah. So the hands low, the hands with the dantian, not too high. So there should, so when they do come up, there's a feeling that it's not so much that they've come up, but that you've slipped down underneath them. So it's really come from your sinking rather than your energy rising. So we're just trying to dissociate the different components, mind, body, spirit, energy, so that one can do something, and then, if necessary, the others will follow, but not necessarily. So normally when the spirit comes up, the energy comes up and you come up. So we just want somehow the spirit to come up by sinking, by doing the opposite with everything else. That's how you release it. It's like the negative punch, just throw, wah. So it's the speed with which you withdraw your hand that whips out the energy. Mm. And then just feel those two pockets, like a hamster, the way a hamster just fills up its pouch and then it looks enormous here. It's like that each time you yield, you sort of just bring a little bit of energy into this pocket and they sort of slowly fill up. There's this sense that you're walking around like this, yeah? Ooh. And then the same with your back. So these sort of almost like two humps at the back, like where your wings would come out of. Okay. Now let's just bring the feet a little bit closer, just to relieve the legs really. And now let's just do a bit more of the turning. And just feel it, just feel, ooh, it just feels so good. It's like your mind can just really relax. It's like with babies, you know, they found, you know, some, especially if they're like born premature and the brain hasn't finished developing, they really respond to being on a swing, to being swung like a cradle, swinging. There's something about the movement that just stimulates the brain to sort of continue its development. And it's like when you're doing something like this, you can really sense that the only way you can think is to become tense. So thinking with words, with language, requires tension. So it requires us to disconnect from the activity, from the world, and connect with us, with our own ego, with our own self. Okay. And now let's just come to attention posture. So the legs are wanting to break, they're not locked. So basically the muscles are having to work all the time to hold you up. There's this sense of woozy lightness in the head. There's this sense of a really settled heaviness in the belly. And your sacrum is dominant and your coccyx is hanging down. And the hands just feel really heavy, like they're really pulling the shoulders down. Okay, and now just bring the hands up and just, this is like a what they call a mudra. A mudra is just a handshake that you make. So this would be like a famous one, and this is a famous one. And when they're sitting down cross-legged and they have their hands like that. Yeah. So here, this is one that you'd see him doing this all the time, just casually, just touching the fingertips very lightly together. So what they say is if you're like holding a sheet of paper between the fingers, it's just enough pressure to stop the paper slipping out. Yeah, so you're not pressing. It's almost like you're touching and trying to pull apart, but they don't come because there's a stickiness to the skin. And then just bring it down to here, so the dantian, and just feel it. Yeah. And just be with the breathing. So it's like a meditation. So the handshake will just help the energy gather in a certain way. So you just sort of count the breathing and just go for 10 breaths, yeah. And then we just move on to a different point. Yeah, so this one's for constipation. So if you feel yourself wanting to go to the toilet, you have my permission. Wow. Yeah, so it's very gentle. So it's like the more gentle, the finer the energy, the more refined, the higher the frequency, if you like. So it's a bit fizzy. And then we'll just bring it up to the head. So now just bring it up. And now the fingers are pointing upwards, and you're just with that forehead center, the head center. Yeah, so the problem with the mind and the use of the attention from the mind is that it's quite coarse and heavy. So this is like, it's almost like you're just trying not to bring the mind here and just letting the hand, the fingers do the work of gathering the energy and just feeling how different it feels than when you just put your attention there. It's a different quality of energy that gathers. And then we'll just bring it down to the heart. So now the fingers sort of point outwards just naturally. So it's difficult to know whether the hand shape is gathering energy or whether it's just making you aware of what's there. And now let's just take it down to the solar plexus, so sort of here, so the fingers point down a little bit. Yeah, so this point tends to get really neglected. In Castaneda talks about it a lot. Yeah, so plexus just means gathering. Yeah, so it's like there's a gathering here, like lots of threads that connect. I mean, all the points are a little bit like that. And then let's bring it up to the throat. Yeah, so this one's really strong. So it's not the thymus, you know, it's here, it's this soft bit just above the sternum, going up into the Adam's apple, going up into the, you know, towards the chin. And now we need to do the bottom one, so the perineum. So just maybe widen the stance a little bit and just bring the hands down and you're just concentrating on the perineum really. Again, just try and just feel the mood of each one. They're all slightly different. And then just come up if you want to. And just now the top of the head. So the crown. Again, just sort of the looseness in the legs. So the sinking, you're still sinking physically and energetically. And then just bring the energy down, like you're tracing a line down the middle of your body. And then let's just try a couple of circuits, so just out. Feel the top of the head, and then just down, forehead, throat, thymus, deep heart, solar plexus, dantian, perineum, and then one more, just out. Making sure the bum doesn't stick out here. Crown, forehead, throat, thymus, deep heart, solar plexus, dantian, and then just lower it down. And then just bring it back to the dantian. Yeah, so John used to say, something like that's a bit like taking medicine. So when you take the medicine, you just take it, and then you forget that you've taken it. It's not as though you're thinking in terms of what the medicine is doing to you afterwards. So you just go through something like that, and then just let it do its work in the background. But you take it, like the way you take the medicine regularly, 2 or 3 times a day, to give it a chance. Okay, so let's finish.